Today, I'm going to be talking about a very important issue that affects many people in the autistic community. I think just many men in the autistic community, many men in general. And I'm going to be sharing my thoughts as an autistic man who has experienced this. And this is toxic masculinity. Oftentimes as men, we're expected to, bottle up our emotions, to just man up, to hide things that would make us sensitive, that would make us different, that would make us, stand out. And I felt this a lot, in my early teens. And I think that it did me a lot of trauma. It did me a lot of damage to have to bottle up those emotions, to bottle up those sensitivities. And the reason why I especially point out autistic men is because autistic people tend to experience the world in a different way. We experience the world in a different way. We tend to be a lot more sensitive, both in terms of our sensory sensitivities, in terms of the way we feel our emotions, in terms of how we interpret teasing and banter. And that includes men. Like, for example, us guys, one of the very toxic things that we do, I say to all the men who are watching this, if you're doing this, stop it. Like, grow up, seriously. This is totally wrong. Is basically insulting people as a form of bonding. Cussing each other, insulting each other, beating up on each other as a form of bonding, I guess. That really, you see, I can learn intellectually that it's not meant to be an actual insult, but intuitively, being an autistic person, I would never be able to understand that. Intuitively, I can't understand teasing, even if intellectually I can understand teasing and banter and being harsh and rough. I think that's just a really toxic behavior that we need to stop doing because it's harming us at the end of the day. And especially autistic people, autistic men in particular, are very harmed. I think that also with sensory sensitivities, it's not that we're soft. We're not soft. We're not less masculine. We're simply different, I think a lot of the reason personally why men nowadays feel so lost is because I think this is for the first time in our history as men where we're able to actually say, where we're able to come to the realization that showing emotions and showing sensitivity is stigmatized for men in this society. And that's why I think a big part of why men very often feel lost nowadays. Because if you can't show your emotions, if you can't show the world who you really are, your differences, what you're truly made of, especially when that deviates from so-called traditional masculinity, you will get beat up on, sometimes physically. And that's a traumatic experience. And that pressure to hide it, what happens is sort of, think of an autistic boy, okay? An autistic teenager who basically, he starts internalizing these sorts of toxic attitudes. And then what he will sort of do is he will project a toxic, aggressive facade while being insecure about who he is on the inside. And it's just identifying with the neurotypical aggressor who insults him as a form of play, who tells him he should hide his emotions and his sensitivities. He identifies with that aggressor and that aggression. He identifies with that toxicity while at the same time just becoming more and more insecure on the inside. And it's a vicious cycle. I think that me personally, my female friends, honestly, getting away from those guys who are just toxic and developing new friends, female friends who helped me see the world in a different way, some of whom were not autistic at all. I think that helped me break out of that toxic and vicious cycle. And it's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's very toxic and it's very damaging. And autistic men are the most clear victims of this whole toxic masculinity thing, of this whole dominant patriarchal thing. And we suffer. We suffer a great deal in silence oftentimes. And this is a huge contributing factor behind masking. And I know masking is not as frequently discussed in autistic men, but for me, speaking personally as an autistic man, that was one of the primary, really, factors in my own masking of my neurodivergence, of my autism, of my general differences in sensitivity in general. You know, you have to, this has to change. This is completely wrong, and this has to change. If there are guys in your life, I'm talking to all the brothers here. If there are guys, if there are fellas that you're with, that you roll with, leave them. If they're insulting you as a form of banter, insulting you, degrading you, even if it's just a teasing thing, and this applies whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, if they're not willing to change for the better. Now, if you roll with guys that are not willing to accept you for your differences or your sensitivity, you feel like you have to give a part of yourself for the brotherhood. And I know this is another aspect of toxic masculinity, feeling like you have to give up part of who you are for the sake of your bros, for the sake of your homies. Like, oh, they're your boys, you know? It's ride or die. No, it's not. Us men need to learn how to have boundaries around each other, okay? It's part of cultivating healthy relationships, not toxic codependent relationships. I'm telling you, if someone is going to violate your boundaries, if the culture of who you're with is, you know, it's your bros, your guys, your homies above all else, and you're putting that above your boundaries, above your differences, above your sensitivities, that's a toxic environment. Powerful, successful men have existed throughout history. But the one defining factor of any powerful, successful man is that he's not afraid to be who he truly is. He's not afraid to be who he truly is. And he is willing to give up toxic brotherhood in favor of true brotherhood. And I'll end there.